This election confirms that freedom and democracy does indeed reign in South Africa, and we are grateful for that. It gives us the assurance that our people are indeed the true custodians of our freedom and democracy. We pay tribute to the millions of our people who went to the polls to choose the public representatives who will champion their collective interests and aspirations and help them realize their shared dreams and common nationhood. Many of our people braved the rain, the cold, and various other weather elements, the wind included, to cast the ballots that will determine the future of our country. We just heard that many of them crossed rivers, swollen rivers at that, and climbed mountains and hills to go and cast their votes. And in doing so, they reaffirmed the vibrancy of our democracy in an environment of diverse opinions, where there was much contestation amongst various parties. After months of campaigning, where political leaders of all persuasions had their say, this week the people of South Africa have themselves had their say.
That is, of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking yesterday at the IEC Results Centre when the results were finally made official. Now, the ANC has ascended to victory yet again, despite its worst ever result. The win gives President Cyril Ramaphosa another 5 years in office, but the party's poor showing will make it difficult for him to fight his rivals. Joining us now to reflect on the party's performance is the ANC's elections head, Fikile Mbalula. We will also be joined by Thoko Didiza, who will join us after the break. And then, of course, also the South African Communist Party's First Deputy Secretary, Mr. Mbalula. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so much for making it. Mr. Mbalula, of course, it was a night of celebration for you guys, but this is your lowest vote ever. And it comes off the back, of course, of the lived experiences of South Africans against state capture, and where many of your elders reminded you that you lost your ways. And you, of course, had to go to your communities and speak to people and ask them to give you one more chance. According to you, why do you believe that the South African people are so patient with you? Is it because the opposition is disorganized, or because they still trust you?
Thank you, Karima, and viewers. I think we are humbled by the victory and given a mandate for decisive victory. From 17 million people, 10 million voted for the ANC. We came from the base of 30% in terms of our polling to where we are. It's the biggest showing. 10 million people gave us their trust. In a turnout of about 65% in South Africa. So if you analyze that and you say it is a poor showing, it is a surge on despite all odds, in a sense. So it is a big showing, and there are many factors that contributed to that. South Africans love the ANC, and they expressed themselves through the vote where we veered away. ANC went into this election accepting that we did, and that we need to self-correct, and we put on the table the question of renewal, and we expressed ourselves of changing things for the better going forward. And that's why they said to us, we trust you, but it's not enough. Go and do well.
In fact, on that note, Mbalula, the ANC leader, Ibrahim Rasool, in the Western Cape actually said it. He said the results in the Western Cape, where, of course, the African National Congress didn't win, and the DA still swept the boards as albeit not as convincingly as they did it years before. He said there's a trust deficit between us and the voters locally, but nationally people voted for Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, you were the one who stood up at the Lekgotla and confronted President Jacob Zuma with the idea of corporate capture and state capture, and that he needed to explain his relationship with the Guptas. Many people believe that you were selling out the working class by staying in the ANC, and of course we saw the birth of the Socialist Workers' Party. But very, very few people turned out. Do you feel vindicated in terms of the position that you took?
Yeah, quite certainly. I think firstly is to appreciate and thank the South African voters for voting for the ANC, our movement, and to thank Comrade Mbalula, who was coordinating our elections and worked very hard, tirelessly. I think we really feel vindicated. At core was much about whether we dissipate or lose our revolution or we defend our revolution, the National Democratic Revolution, which is simply, it's a program to transform our society, deal with all inequalities from race, class, and gender, and also making sure that social inequalities in South Africa are addressed. So it is in that regard that we felt that we are much vindicated as the SACP. But of course, it does say that when we went to the communities and saw some of the degradation, some of the regression that has taken place in different communities, it requires much more focus going forward, and I don't think that we should even talk about the decline in the vote. We won the elections. There won't be excuses. We won't accept excuses not to respond to the challenges facing our people, and we have to redeem ourselves. And I think that Rasul is right. Comrade Rasul, in the Western Cape, we've been dealing with challenges regarding our leadership there, particularly in the ANC, in the alliance. There's been lack of coherence. I mean, a couple of weeks before the elections, we even had a meeting there, DSG. I couldn't join the meeting. I went to campaign in George, and she was actually having a meeting with the provincial leadership, discourse, which were unnecessary, just even at
own goals that were being scored.
Own goals. So we would have to sort that going forward.
I just want to welcome to the conversation, viewers, also Ms. Thoko Didiza from the African National Congress, who is here this morning. Peter, I will give you the pleasure of asking the only lady at the table beside myself the first question.
Yeah. I wanted to just ask whether in going into this election there were discussions about how to do it, whether the strategy was different in the party, because it seemed different. The election, there were no really big rallies. You know, you weren't falling each other to fill up stadiums and this sort of thing. It seemed a much more sort of intimate campaign than in the past. With an interesting result, if I can just, because I've just seen it. In 2014, the outcome was that you got 249 seats, and the EFF got 25, which equals 274, and that is now still the case. You've got now 230 seats, the EFF has 44, and there's still 274 seats. So it was a straight fight between the ANC and the EFF. What did you do differently?
What we did differently is exactly what you're talking about, that in terms of our strategy, we decided to emphasize more on voter contact, to communicate with the voters, to listen to the voters, to also share our message with the voters, what it is that we're going to do different, given the challenges that they were facing, given the issues that they were raising to the ANC directly, which my colleagues have already said. And I think that, for me, was a game changer in these elections, that we had all our, candidates, our structures, volunteers, leadership at local level, really going door to door. We spent most of our time talking directly to the voters. Even where we had, community meetings, it was at a community level where people are, without drawing them into bigger stadia for rallies.
But with the EFF having grown as much as it has, Fikile and Mbalula, what are the chances that it will be able to exert more pressure from the left on the ANC than it had in the past? It took a lot of credit last year after Cyril Ramaphosa first came into office for pushing him into the land debate and the land vote. Are you more or less immune to that now?
Look, the EFF days, and they benefited from the dividend of our veering away.
Yep.
And I think that has come to an end now, because they have got to deal with real issues and not rising through anarchy and disruption and ANC's own goals. Those days are over. Yeah. So they've got to prove themselves that they are real left and indeed left, because people will look at them in terms of championing the cause of the left, like the SACP, in terms of being the real left and deal with the real issues, not voting for them on populist rhetoric. Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting in this parliamentary session going forward. The ANC will also have to plug in terms of the posture we're going to maintain, and how we're going to behave and use our incumbency.
Well, this is the thing. So, what will come up in this parliament will be a possible change to the constitution to make more explicit the fact that it allows for expropriation without compensation. How you can only do it with the EFF's support. That mandate can only, because together you do have a two-thirds majority. How do you imagine that you and the EFF can come to the same wording and agree on the same wording, and actually do what the December 17 conference told Cyril Ramaphosa to do, or told the government to do?
I think that's possible to do because we did it. Actually, few people appreciate that even the first resolution that EFF tabled in Parliament, which was then adopted, was actually amended by the ANC working together with the EFF, because there's agreement that this is an important issue for South Africa and we need to deal with it. Even in the processes when we were going towards the constitutional review, asking people through public participation, what were those areas in the Constitution that they wanted made explicit. And there was convergence even in the report with the EFF. And having chaired the ad hoc committee in the month of February to March, there was indeed appreciation on the process going forward and where are those issues where we need amendment. So personally, from where I sit, I don't think we will not be able to pull together and other parties, because it's not just the EFF who supported this view.
I want to bring in you, Mr. Mapahila. In many places, the ANC structures were moribund. The kind of gatekeeping that had happened had led to ANC structures not functioning. In a place like the Northwest, we saw the ANC retaining its position. Many of your people went into the battlefield to bat for the ANC because you had leaders who almost tacitly gave their support to other formations, a host of them in different provinces. How are you going to use the fact that you assisted in getting the African National Congress to this victory to address the issue of a reconfigured alliance, to address the questions that you've put on the table around the economy, and against a background where you are often accused of taking the crumbs of the table from the ANC and not actually really standing up for working class issues?
Well, when we took up those issues, we were standing for the working class. There's no doubt about that. I think we adopted a posture that said, given the strategic nature of these elections, we're focusing on engaging our people, and that is why, for instance, there was a fight back process which we defeated in this round of elections. So we decided to reconnect with the people and do the hard work of making sure that our movement is able to retain political power. At the same time, we have tabled the debate for the reconfiguration of the alliance. As the SACP, the ANC itself from Nasrec accepted the framework. We have further had discussions in the alliance. COSATU has come on board also from each Congress, the same with SANCO. We are now finalizing a common alliance document on reconfiguration. Quite clearly, we are not a party of crumbs. In fact, we have already noticed that some of the comrades over the weekend, as the results were streaming in, they were already planning in provinces for appointments of premiers and so forth. And that's a complete wrong focus. But we are simply saying that's an alliance process. We'll have to deal with these matters in the alliance, but we still allow the leadership of the ANC to come through in that process.
Mr. Fikile Mbalula, one of the things that you said in an interview, you said that if Cyril Ramaphosa wasn't elected at Nasrec, your own polling showed that you would have come out, at 40%. Last night, one of our reporters, Fikile Maseko, said, asked Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma how she felt about that, and she wouldn't be drawn on it. She said, we must go back to you and ask you that question. So now I'm re-asking you the question that Nkosazana instructed Samkele to do. If she had won, do you think you would have been able to take this election, considering the damage that you had done to your own brand, the internal fighting, and of course the very real issue of state capture?
Well, Nkosazana would have come in as a new candidate, the same as President Ramaphosa came in. What I can account for is that Ramaphosa, elected at the present moment, became a game changer. I don't know what Nkosazana would have given us. And it could have given us good, or it could have given us bad.
But what was your polling saying?
Well, our polling did not focus on her. Our polling said that Ramaphosa is accepted by citizens above the ANC. So, like all presidents, Mandela was good, Mbeki was good, Zuma also was good in his own right as a president. Ramaphosa was a game changer for the ANC.
What, does he, because we're running out of time, I think, does he consult, does he have to consult, or should he consult with the NEC or cabinet or close colleagues when he forms his cabinet?
Yes, he does consult as a president. Yeah. I mean, he does. But at the end of the day, he's got to take a decision. Yeah. Him. Is his prerogative, but he bounds, of course, with the party. Not with us. And he consults solely. I'm being told
time up in my head. I just want to ask Mr. Didiza the final question. We're all speaking about a leaner, meaner, more effective, efficient government. Everyone is talking about a very, very reduced cabinet. That's going to make a lot of people unhappy. It's going to increase tensions in the African National Congress, because there's always jostling for positions. What has been agreed in the African National Congress as to the trimming down of cabinet? What kind of number are we talking about?
Well, at the moment, I don't think we can talk about issues of numbers, but the principle of having a leaner cabinet, that has been agreed. Obviously, the president in consultation would reflect on what ministries he can pull together and whether in all ministries you might have to have deputy ministers or not. I think those are the debates that will actually ensue, particularly as the president reflects on the structure of government. Obviously, as the president of the ANC also, he will do the necessary consultation. But as women, and maybe speaking for the younger generation, we would like to see an intergenerational mix in that cabinet that reflects also young people, and also that reflects women who are in the majority in this country. And that's what we would look for as women and young people, I'm sure, in those debates.
Panel, thank you so very much. Thoko Didiza, Fikile Mbalula, and of course, Solima Pahila. Up next, we take a look at these stories making headlines in the weekend papers.